Hello, and thank you for joining us for the weekly update. I'm Scott Algier, and as always, I'm joined by Jonathan Braley and Ian Andriachek. Gentlemen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Scott.
Hey, good afternoon, Scott. Thanks for having us.
Yep. So, John, let's start with SolarWinds. There's always new information coming out. There's been lots of news this week. What's the update?
Yeah, so we had some new news from CrowdStrike. On January 11th, they released some new intelligence surrounding a third malware strain involved in the SolarWinds attacks. So a little background, CrowdStrike's been working with SolarWinds to kind of investigate the root cause of the attacks. And during that investigation, they found a malicious tool that has been deployed in the build environment that was actually used to inject the Sunburst backdoor into the SolarWinds Orion platform. So what's interesting is they were able to do this without arousing too much suspicion from the development team, who are kind of charged with delivering the kind of product. They're calling the new malicious tool Sunspot, and the tool was essentially used to insert the Sunburst backdoor into the build process. Sunspot works by monitoring running processes and replacing source files so that they can include that backdoor code. So yeah, just kind of interesting. We're kind of seeing a little bit more develop on how this actually happened. So some great work there from CrowdStrike, and it's definitely a good read on Sunspot and kind of how they got that initial backdoor in. We're able to kind of go from there. So you can read more about their blog. It's publicly released on the CrowdStrike web pages.
Great, thank you. And there's always new information coming out. So as it comes out, we'll share that with our constituencies during the week. So thank you for that update.
Yeah, and there was one other one with SolarWinds. There's a website called solarleaks.net that's been circling the web this week. The actors running the website claim to have data for sale related to the SolarWinds breach. Of note, the actors claim to be selling a couple things. They claim to have Microsoft Windows partial source code and various Microsoft repositories, Cisco multiple product source code, as well as an internal bug tracker. SolarWinds product source code, including that of Orion, and a customer portal dump. And lastly, they're claiming to have FireEye private red team tools, source code, binaries, and documentation. So the solarleaks.net domain is registered through the domain registrar in Jala, which is actually a known registrar used by Russian hacking groups. We do want to caution that it's still unclear if this website is legitimate or not, due to the details of SolarWinds incidents being just about everywhere. It wouldn't be hard for a group to kind of pretend they had these details and to spin up a website like this. So as of now, none of these leaks have been confirmed. They've even been denied by one of the companies listed. So Cisco did release a statement publicly that they are aware of the website, but have no evidence at this time of any theft of intellectual property related to the SolarWinds attack. So it's kind of a developing story still, but we're kind of keeping an eye on it there. We just wanted to let people know that leak site is on the web.
Yeah, thank you. So unconfirmed reports, but interesting nonetheless, and we'll provide more information once we receive it, once we're able to confirm or whether it's all debunked. But we'll follow up with people on that. Yeah, thank you for those updates. Thank you, John. Ian, so let's talk about a CISA alert that came out this week on practices in the cloud. So what can you tell us about this CISA alert?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. And hey, CISA released an advisory yesterday. It was on January 13th. They're informing companies that attackers have been taking advantage of weak cloud configurations. They're using phishing and other attack vectors to exploit misconfigured security controls. They're using phishing emails containing malicious links in an attempt to harvest user credentials, which then could be used to access cloud resources associated with them. When the links are clicked, users are redirected to a web page that appears to be a legitimate file hosting website. After gaining access to the cloud accounts, the actors were seen leveraging email services to send messages containing malware to staff members within the organizations. Since the messages appear to be coming from a trusted email account, victims are more likely to trust the content contained in the message. CISA's advisory also states that the bad guys are using Tor networks to hide their traffic and activities. It makes it harder for companies to identify these malicious activities on their networks. The attackers were also seen bypassing multi-factor authentication using browser cookies known as passive cookie attacks. Attackers extract a browser cookie from a user's machine, one that has already passed multi-factor authentication checkpoints. The cookie can then be used in separate browser sessions or on other systems, essentially bypassing any MFA requirements on the account. They also attempted to brute force usernames and passwords, but CISA stated that they were unsuccessful in those attacks. In the advisory, they listed some recommendations and solutions there, and companies can use these guidelines to defend themselves against these attacks. There's also a STIX file as well in the advisory. It contains some indicators of compromise.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. So that's publicly available on the CISA website, yes?
Yes, and we included in the daily report as well.
Cool. And Ian, I had a question. So as someone who uses multi-factor authentication, sometimes it won't ask you for a PIN code every single time you log into an account. Is that kind of because it remembers the device? So is that kind of cookie based in the browser? So I guess these guys realized they could somehow get that cookie and make it trust whatever device they're on. Is that kind of what's going on?
Yeah, well, essentially you want to configure out multi-factor authentication to require a PIN code or a one-time authorization every time somebody logs in. But yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. They gain access to the victim's device and they're able to go into, the operating system files, grab that cookie, move it over to their system and basically mimic the user account using that cookie. And it essentially bypasses the multi-factor authentication. But like I said, as long as you set the accounts to require a passcode every sign-on, usually helps prevent those types of attacks.
Cool. Got it. Thank you.
So Ian, switching gears a little bit, we were discussing earlier about an attack against the European Medicines Agency that resulted in some leaking of the Pfizer COVID vaccine information. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's pretty scary, Scott. They informed the public on January 12th that attackers were able to access a database containing COVID-19 vaccine data. The EMA's primary responsibilities include evaluating, monitoring, and supervising any new medicines that are introduced. So it sounds like essentially anytime a new vaccine is just introduced, it has to go through them before being approved. So essentially they would hold any data associated with the vaccines. The organization said that attackers leaked the data online and that several hacker forums are hosting the stolen data, which includes email addresses, peer review comments, Word documents, PDFs, and PowerPoint presentations. The agency is currently working with law enforcement in an attempt to identify the attackers. There's some good news here. In a recent update provided by the EMA, they noted that only a limited number of documents were accessed, and as well as only one single IT application. This is not the first attack we've seen targeting companies that store COVID-19 related information, Scott, and state-sponsored hacking groups will more than likely continue to target pharmaceutical companies, hospitals, and data providers alike. It's going to require these type of organizations to really beef up their cybersecurity posture.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. So I think another lesson there is they didn't get the information from the pharmaceutical company itself, which is probably pretty secure, but they went into the attackers hit what they think was a less secure target, an easier target that had the same information. So it's another lesson about your third parties and who have access to your data and how they're a target. So if you're giving data to those third parties, be warned. And if you're a third party who has somebody else's data, be warned as well, right? Because you will be targeted based on the information you have from somebody else. So gentlemen, thank you very much. There's a lot going on, obviously. Appreciate the work you do to keep everyone involved and updated about what's going on. Thank you very much for your work, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, and thank you for watching the weekly update. We'll be back again next week. Thank you.